Welcome back everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make pulled pork for beginners in an offset smoker. Alright, so we're going to get started today by getting a fire going. So we'll open our firebox lid, take our charcoal basket out. We'll open up our side firebox door while we're here. I'm going to get some fire lighters going. Then I'm going to put my charcoal chimney on top. And then you want to fill that up with either lump charcoal or briquettes. That's going to take about 10 to 15 minutes, so we'll use that time to trim and season our pork. Alright, so here we have our beautiful piece of pork. This is a pork scotch. It's also sold as pork collar or neck fillet. I love using these because they're boneless, they're a nice uniform shape, meaning they're going to cook nice and even. So the beauty about using this cut as well is they don't need much trimming. This piece was around 2.2 kilos. Only around $30, so it's very well priced as well. And all we're going to do here is trim off any thin edges, silver skin and excess fat. Alright, so I'm happy with how this is looking. Like I said, we've just trimmed off any thin edges, excess fat and silver skin. Just got one little bit there I'll trim off. So now we can get this seasoned up. Alright, so if you've got a favourite pork rub, feel free to use that. I'm just going to be using a combination of our honey soy slammer and steak shooter. Before I season this up, I'm just going to give it a light coat in mustard. That's just going to help our rubs stick to the meat. Then I'm going to lay down a base coat of our honey soy slammer. Then we'll top it off with our steak shooter. Alright, so our pork is all trimmed and seasoned. If you wanted to use a quick, easy and tasty homemade pork rub, I'll put a recipe down in the description for you to check out. But for now, our briquettes should be just about ready, so let's check on them and set the rest of this smoker up. Alright, so those briquettes are pretty much good to go, so we'll take our chimney out. We'll get our charcoal basket back in. And then I'm going to dump these briquettes on the far right side of our charcoal basket. And then we want to get a log split on. I've got some beautiful pecan we'll be using today from Natural Smoke. We want to get that straight on top of those coals. And we want to leave our lid and side firebox door open until this log catches fire nicely and starts burning clean. Alright, so after about a minute, that log is burning nice. So we'll close our firebox lid. We'll leave our side firebox door open for now. Then we'll put the next log we'll use up on the firebox lid. That way it'll preheat and catch fire really quick when we put that one on next. Then we want to make sure our chimney stack is open. Then we just want to give our smoker 5 to 10 minutes for that fire to settle down and our temperatures to stabilize. You always want to make sure you've got nice, clean, clear or blue looking smoke coming out of your chimney stack before you put any meat on. If you've got thick, heavy, white, dirty smelling smoke coming out of your chimney stack, don't put any meat on. That usually indicates that your fire's not burning efficiently. You might need to give your fire more oxygen, so open up your firebox if you need to. You might have too much moisture in your wood, so make sure you're using wood splits that are suitable for smoking meat, or you might be using a log split that's too big and it's smothering the fire. The size of the log splits you'll need will change depending on the type of offset smoker you have. Typically, the smaller the offset you have, the smaller your log splits will be. I'll run you through everything we're doing today in regards to offset smoker fire management, but if you did want to delve a little bit deeper into that topic, I'll put a link down in the description for you to check out, which will take you to a video I've done purely on offset smoker fire management. So we'll give our smoker a few more minutes to settle, then we'll come back to get this meat on. Alright, so our fire's settled down, our temperature's holding nicely around 275 Fahrenheit or 135 Celsius. So what I'm going to do quickly before we get this meat on is put a drip tray in. And then we'll get this beautiful pork scotch on. Now as you'll see, I've put our pork scotch just over halfway up our cooking grate. You don't want to put it too close to the firebox, otherwise it's going to catch too much direct heat, which is also another reason why we build our fire over that far side of the firebox. So now we can shut our lid and let our pork scotch smoke away. So for the first 2 hours or so of this cook, all we really need to worry about is maintaining a clean, steady burning fire. And in most cases, the temperature gauges on your lid are going to show a slightly higher reading than what's actually happening at that cooking grate level. So if you've got a probe you can clip on your cooking grate next to whatever you're smoking, that's always a good idea so you can get an accurate reading of what's happening around whatever you're cooking. So we'll let our pork smoke away for a little while now, and we'll come back when we put our next log split on, which will be in around half an hour to 45 minutes. Alright, it's been about 40 minutes since we put that first log on. I can see our temperatures are slowly declining. So we'll open our lid. As you can see, that first log is burning out nicely. So we'll put that next log on. That should only take about 20 to 30 seconds to catch light nicely. Alright, and as you can see, that's burning nice now. So we can close our lid back up. And then because these next 2 logs are on the smaller side, we're going to get 2 of them preheating on top of that firebox. Alright, so we're pretty much going to repeat that process in our firebox every 40 minutes or so for the remainder of this cook. And as wood types vary so much across Australia and around the world, my best advice if you're trying to source some wood splits for offset smokers is to have a chat with some local wood suppliers. Let them know that you're after some wood splits for offset smoking, and let them find something suitable for you. But if you are in South Australia, get in touch with Natural Smoke and they'll point you in the right direction. So we're going to continue to let our pork smoke away now, so when we come back we'll put some more wood splits on, and I reckon it'll be time to start spritzing our pork as well. Alright, so it's been about 40 minutes again. Time to get these log splits on. Now if it's a super cold day and your log splits just aren't preheating enough sitting on top of that firebox lid, you can always preheat them on your cooking grate in your cooking chamber. Alright, so they're burning nicely now. Let's have a look at this pork. Alright, so that's looking good. Got some really nice colour to it. Looking a touch dry in some places, so we're just going to give it a spritz. I'm just using water, but any fruit juice will do. And that's just going to help keep the meat nice and moist. Alright, so now every time we put a log split on, we'll be spritzing our pork until we need to wrap it. I reckon we'll be another 2 hours or so away from wrapping our pork. I'm going to be looking for some really nice colour on it and for our bark to have set as well. So we'll just keep repeating that process of maintaining that fire and spritzing that pork, and we'll be back once we're a bit further into this cook and almost ready to wrap this pork. Alright, so we're a bit over 4 hours into this cook. This pork scotch is looking incredible. We're just going to check our internal. I like to be at around 160 Fahrenheit or 70-ish degrees Celsius before I wrap, which looks like we are just around that mark. So I'm happy to get this out. We'll get it on some foil on top of 2 tablespoons of butter. We'll put the same amount of butter on top. We'll drizzle over some honey as well. And if you want to add anything like fruit juice or cider, then go ahead. Then we're just going to wrap it up nice and tight. Then I like to just get it in a foil tray and we can put this back in the smoker. Then we can go ahead and put a probe in at this stage as well. And we'll shut our lid and let this keep going. Alright, so once your meat's wrapped in foil, there's no harm finishing it off in the oven. It's not going to take on any smoke, so if you want to make life easier for yourself, set your oven to the same temperature as you were running your smoker, and you can always finish it off in there. And when it comes to wrapping your meat, it's all about personal preference. If you want to use foil, butcher's paper, or if you don't want to wrap at all, that's completely up to you. Wrapping in foil will speed up the cooking process as it creates a lot of radiant heat, but because you're basically steaming whatever's in that foil, you do lose a bit of that bark. So if you do really want to preserve that bark, you can either wrap in butcher's paper or not wrap at all. But generally, your cook will take a little bit longer if you don't wrap in foil. So now our pork's back in, we've got a probe in there. All we need to do now is take our pork until it reaches an internal temperature of 205 Fahrenheit or 96 degrees Celsius. At that stage, we're going to start checking for probe tenderness, so we'll come back once we're ready to do that. Alright, so as you can see, we've hit temperature in our pork scotch, so let's check it for probe tenderness. Alright, so we just want to probe around both ends. We want to be looking for very little to no resistance when we're probing around. I can feel a little bit of resistance right about here. This end up here is feeling quite nice. It is slightly thicker where I'm getting resistance, so what we'll do is we'll wrap it back up and let it go for another half an hour. Alright, it's time to check our pork again. Alright, so that is feeling much better, so I'm going to get it out and onto our cutting board. Then we can shut our lid, close our chimney stack and the side door to our firebox, which will kill the fire. Alright, so all I'm going to do now is we'll let our pork sit there for a few minutes unwrapped to steam off and stop that cooking process. After that, it's time to give it a rest. Now when it comes to resting, you've got a few options. If your pork is done relatively close to when you want to serve it, you can just let it rest, unwrapped at room temperature for about 30 to 45 minutes and then serve it. Or if you've got a few hours before it's ready to be served, then you can wrap your pork back up in the foil after it's steamed off. You can put it in an esky and it'll stay hot for 3 to 4 hours. You can get a little bit longer out of it if you preheat your esky with boiling water, then pour the boiling water out, put your pork in there wrapped up, and then you can also put an old towel in there as well. That's going to act as some extra insulation, then whatever you're resting can stay in there for 6, 7, even up to 8 hours, and it'll still be warm when you're ready to serve it. So I'm going to let this pork rest, and we'll be back once I'm ready to pull it apart and have a taste. Alright, so our pork is just about ready to come out and get pulled apart. I like to wear some thin, cheap gardening gloves from Bunnings underneath my plastic gloves when I'm pulling any meat apart. So there's a handy tip for you. Every week I'll upload a tip for our YouTube members in our community tab. There's lots of perks to becoming a YouTube member. For example, our YouTube members got to see this video weeks ago. We'll put a link down in the description if you're interested in becoming a member. Click on that and it'll give you all the information you need to know. All right, now my gloves are on, let's make some pulled pork. All right, so we're just gonna pull this apart in a tray on our cooking grate, just to get away from our glary cutting board. We're gonna take our pork out. I'm going to empty these wrap juices into the tray, and we'll rest our pork back in there and pull it apart. Alright, now time for a taste. Alright, that pulled apart beautifully. Time for a taste. That is so good, so full of flavour. Make sure you mix those wrap juices back through, or sometimes I'll mix a bit of barbecue sauce through that pulled meat. But seriously, that is so tasty and there's so much you can do with it as well. You can make a pulled pork sandwich, you can use that as pizza toppings, you can put it in pastas, in nachos, tacos, pies, and so much more. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments below. But for now, that's the end of the video. So thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.